It was well past closing time on a cold night in July 1995. The streets of New Delhi were quiet, but inside the courtyard of a shuttered restaurant, a roaring blaze was casting a harsh orange glow against the stone. A local vegetable vendor noticed the thick, acrid smoke pouring over the boundary wall. She flagged down a patrolling constable and a home guard, who scaled the perimeter to investigate. Inside, the restaurant manager was desperately stoking a massive clay oven, a tandoor, claiming he was just burning old political banners. But peering into the flames, the officers saw the partially charred remains of a human body. The victim was 29-year-old Naina Sani. Whoever put her in that oven was attempting to incinerate her completely, erasing her face, her fingerprints, and her identity. For an investigator, fire is a devastating obstacle. Reducing a body to ash destroys the physical evidence of the crime, creating a void that makes solving a murder nearly impossible. Suspicion quickly fell on Sani's partner, Sushil Sharma. As the president of the Delhi Youth Congress, Sharma was a man of intense ambition, deeply embedded in the political power structures of the capital. But Sharma had already vanished. When police broke into the couple's apartment, they found it locked, empty, and freshly scrubbed clean. There was no body, no weapon, and no obvious sign of a struggle. The investigation almost derailed immediately. The first medical team to examine the recovered remains conducted a hasty autopsy and concluded that the cause of death was simply burns. If the official record stated she died from the fire, the defense could argue it was a tragic accident. Between the lack of eyewitnesses and Sharma's political clout, he would likely walk free. To catch a fugitive with powerful friends, investigators needed to prove that a homicide had occurred in the first place, and they had to do it using evidence that was already burned beyond recognition. The lieutenant governor intervened, ordering a second examination by a special medical board led by Dr. T.D. Dogra, a leading forensic expert. Reviewing the initial report and examining the severity of the burns, Dr. Dogra grew skeptical. The pattern of the damage didn't align with someone who had simply died in a fire. He made an unorthodox call. Bypassing standard morgue procedures, the team transported the fragile, charred remains to a civil hospital to run them through a full-body X-ray machine. The scans revealed two dark, distinct shapes. They were .32 caliber bullets, lodged deep inside the victim's skull and neck. Those two projectiles proved the fire was a cover-up. Sahni was killed by gunshot wounds before the incineration began, shifting the case into a confirmed homicide. The forensic team now faced a massive physical hurdle. The extreme heat of the tandoor had caused Sahni's skull to crack into 36 brittle, chalk-like fragments, making it impossible to formally identify her or map the exact trajectory of the fatal shots. Standard medical science had reached its limit, so Dr. Dogra looked elsewhere. He went to the National Museum and enlisted the help of an artist whose day job was restoring shattered ancient pottery. Working over a newspaper base, the artist meticulously rebuilt the skull, piece by piece, using plaster to bond the 36 jagged fragments back together. Meanwhile, experts at a laboratory in Hyderabad spent 3 grueling months extracting and profiling DNA from the remaining tissue. The results definitively tied the reconstructed remains to Sahni's parents. With the victim identified and the cause of death established, police worked backward. They matched the recovered bullets to Sharma's licensed revolver, and they found traces of Sahni's blood in the trunk of his white Maruti 800, the car used to transport her body. By combining ballistics, DNA profiling, and cross-disciplinary reconstruction, investigators forged an unbreakable chain of circumstantial evidence. Sharma had run out of room for plausible deniability. The trial court, and later the Delhi High Court, sentenced Sushil Sharma to death for murder. The judges pointed to the brutal mechanics of the crime. The attempt to chop the body into pieces and incinerate it in a restaurant oven shocked the collective conscience of the public. Under Indian law, the death penalty is reserved for rarest of rare cases, weighing aggravating against mitigating factors. For lower courts, the sheer savagery of the body's disposal tipped the scales completely. They ruled this horrific cover-up indicated a mind too depraved to live. But in 2013, the Supreme Court of India took a different view, unexpectedly commuting Sharma's death sentence to life in prison. Applying legal precedent, the court drew a strict line between the gruesome method of body disposal and the actual psychology behind the murder. They determined that Sharma shot Sani in a fit of possessive rage fueled by a deeply strained marriage. It was a targeted, personal crime, rather than an act of generalized terror that made him an irredeemable menace to society. The justices also noted that Sharma had no prior criminal record. Because there was a possibility he could be rehabilitated, the strict legal threshold for execution was no longer met. That ruling set the stage for a controversial final chapter. After serving 23 years behind bars, Sharma was released from prison in 2018 on the grounds of good conduct. The Tandoor murder remains a benchmark for how Indian courts navigate the gap between scientific investigation and the shifting doctrine of capital punishment. In the end, forensic science rebuilt the chain of evidence that survived the fire.